Throughout the histories of Arda, there have been many prominent characters that have touched the annals of history, be that for good or for evil, or in large or small ways. Some characters affect the passage of time so subtly that it might be as though they never existed, whilst others shape the very face of the world with their will. One such character is Galad, High King of the Elves, one of the greatest elves of the Second Age. Greetings all, I'm your guide the Archivist. Today I will look at Galad, his origins, his influences on the events of Middle-earth and his final fate. Before we begin, please remember to light the like and subscribe waystones down below, so that more people can learn from the archives. Appearance and character. Araenion Galad, also known as Artanaro, was an esteemed Noldorian elf and the son of Orodreth. He held the prestigious title of the last High King of the Noldor in Middle-earth, and was also known as the High King of the Elves of the West, High King of the Eldar, King of Lindon, Lord of the High Elves, and the Lord of Eriador. Galad commanded great respect from both the Noldor and the Sindar, and was regarded as the prominent leader among elves in Middle-earth. He played a pivotal role in the formation of the last alliance of elves and men, with King Elendil leading the elves in the war against Sauron. Unfortunately, his death during this conflict marked the end of the Noldorin kingdoms in Middle-earth, although some Noldor continued to reside in Eladris or the Grey Havens through the Third Age. In the prologue sequence of Peter Jackson's The Fellowship of the Ring film, the death scene of Galad was omitted. However, he briefly appears fighting multiple orcs with his spear before Sauron emerges at the battlefield. He also briefly appears as one of the original 3 elven ring bearers, along with Galadriel and Círdan wearing Vilya. Galad's armour resembled that of all elves of the Second Age, as seen in the prologue to the first film, a cuirass and fault of interlocking lames of steel plate over a hauberk of fine mail, together with pauldrons and braces. His armour, reflecting his status as High King, was blued and etched with vine-like tracery, and the plates were embossed with Tengwar symbols. It included leather pants for greater protection, and at the throat, he wore a steel collar bearing his heraldric's insignia. His deep blue cloak and golden armour, along with a golden crown made for him by Celebrimbor, who crafted the Rings of Power, completed his attire instead of a helmet. The shield of the High King shared the same shape as the common elven shield, but was more richly adorned. It was enamelled in blue, and around the centre a jewel and decorated in gold, with the 12 stars of his house. Since Aeglos, his great spear, was wielded two-handed, it is likely that the shield was carried only to the field of battle rather than onto it, to be left with one of Galad's attendants. It may have been used by him when he fought with the sword. Powers. Whilst we have no clear evidence of Galad showing any evidence of supernatural power, he did possess the extreme long life of an elf, as well as the ring Vilya until his death, an incredible piece of jewellery featuring a sapphire set in a gold band, and it was widely renowned as the most powerful of the 3 rings. Whilst the exact capabilities of Vilya are not explicitly stated, it is believed that it held the power to heal and preserve. Some have even speculated that the ring had influence over certain elements, pointing to the occasions when Elrond summoned a powerful flood of water to thwart the Nazgul as they tried to cross the Brunion. Galadriel used her ring to exert control over Lothlorien, suggesting that Elrond may have done the same with Vilya and Rivendell. He was also the rightful king of the Noldor, and as such possessed a sense of purpose and righteousness against the forces of the Shadow, especially after the disaster of the sinking of Beleriand in the First Age. The First Age. Galad, born in YT 1481 in Eldamar, was the son of Orodreth and the grandson of Agrod and Elios, thus linking him to the house of Finarfin. During the time of the exile of the Noldor and the significant battles like the Dagor Bracolak and the Ner-Neath Enoediad, he was still quite young. His father ruled Minas Tirith on Tol Sirion, but before its fall to the forces of Sauron, Orodreth sent his wife and son to the havens of the Falas under the care of Círdan the Shipwright. Galad resided there until the havens were destroyed by Morgoth after the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, after which Galad and Círdan fled to the Isle of Balar with the rest of the Philathrim. Following the death of Turgon during the fall of Gondolin, Gil-galad became the king of the Noldor. When the sons of Feanor committed the third kinslaying, Gil-galad heard about the sacking of the havens of Sirion, but by the time he and his army arrived, the Feanorians had already fled. Nevertheless, the survivors of Sirion joined forces with Gil-galad and accompanied him to Balar, where they informed him of Elrond and Elros's captivity. After the War of Wrath, the remaining sons of Feanor disappeared from history. Maedhros took his own life, whilst Maglor vanished without a trace, leaving Elrond and Elros alone. Consequently, Gil-galad eventually welcomed Elrond into his ranks as his herald, after Elrond chose to align himself with the elves. The Second Age. In the first era of the Second Age, Gil-galad chose to remain in Middle-earth and founded a stronghold in Lindon, strategically positioned to ward off potential threats. At its peak, his dominion stretched eastward to the Misty Mountains and the western regions of Greenwood the Great, although most of the Eldar resided in Lindon and Rivendell, the sanctuary under Elrond's protection. Gil-galad forged an alliance with the men of Westerness, particularly with Tar Aldarion, the Mariner, the Faithful, and Elendil. Throughout the Second Age, he held the title of High King of the Noldor. During this period, Tar Aldarion, the King of Númenor, presented Gil-galad with the seeds of Melrin, or Malorn trees. However, as the seeds wouldn't thrive in his domain, he entrusted them to Galadriel before her departure from Lindon. After carrying the seeds for a considerable time, she eventually planted them in Lindoranand. The area was renamed Lorelin de Renan, Lorien of Blossom. At certain points, Gil-galad and Elrond encountered a stranger named Annatar, who identified himself as the Lord of Gifts. Although his words and gifts seemed pleasing, Gil-galad discerned that Annatar was not who he claimed to be. Consequently, he refused to engage with him and warned all the elves to avoid his enigmatic figure. When Gil-galad declined to associate with Annatar, he was welcomed in Eregion, where he taught the elves how to create the Rings of Power. Unfortunately, Gil-galad's suspicions were warranted, as Annatar was revealed to be Sauron in disguise, and the rings were instruments for his malevolent schemes to dominate Middle-earth. Later, Celebrimbor entrusted Gil-galad with the Elven Ring Vilya, the Ring of Air, and Narya, the Ring of Fire, two of the three rings, which he passed on to his messenger Elrond and his assistant Círdan, before his demise in the War of the Last Alliance. During the War of the Elves and Sauron launched a massive invasion of Eriador, resulting in the destruction of Eregion and a siege of the Grey Havens. Thankfully, Gil-galad received aid from the Númenóreans under the rule of Tar Minastir, who sent a powerful fleet that defeated Sauron's forces. Following his narrow escape, Sauron retreated to Mordor to regather his strength and plan revenge against the Dúnedain. Over 1,000 years later, the Númenóreans confronted Sauron once more, taking him as a prisoner and leaving Gil-galad to rule Middle-earth in peace. During Sauron's absence, Gil-galad's power grew, causing dismay to Sauron upon his return. The survivors of Númenor, known as the Faithful, established the realms in exile in Middle-earth, with Gil-galad becoming an ally of High King Elendil and constructing the three towers on the Tower Hills. A century later, when Sauron attacked Gondor, Elendil and Gil-galad decided to form the last alliance of elves and men to confront him. Gil-galad spent years assembling his forces, ultimately joining with other leaders such as Orifer of the Greenwood, Amdir of Lorien, and Durin IV of Khazad-dûm. A notable weapon of Gil-galad was a spear named Aeglos, which meant icicle, and was unmatched in battle. The army of the Last Alliance, alongside the forces of Gondor, achieved victory in the Battle of the Dagorlad after a long and bloody confrontation with Sauron's forces. Following the battle, the combined forces laid siege to Barad-dûr for 7 years. Sauron eventually emerged, leading to a duel with Gil-galad and Elendil. Although they inflicted mortal wounds on Sauron, they also suffered severe injuries. This sacrifice allowed Isildur to remove the ring from Sauron's hand. Unfortunately, Gil-galad succumbed to the burns inflicted by Sauron and passed on to the halls of Mandos. Without a wife or children, the kingship of the Noldor ended in Middle-earth, and Círdan became the Lord of the Grey Havens and Lindon. and so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the like and subscribe waystones down below. Nilue Gavanadvan. Until we meet again.